The end of the world will not be loud. It won't be a nuclear flash that vaporizes your shadow on the sidewalk, and it won't be a roaring zombie horde tearing down your front door. The most dangerous apocalypse is the one you can't see until you are already being digested. I'm talking about ecophagy, molecular nanotechnology, the Gray Goo. It is the nightmare scenario where microscopic assemblers decide that the carbon in your body would be much more useful as a copy of themselves. This isn't science fiction, it is simply math. Exponential replication. One bot becomes two become four, and within 72 hours, the surface of the Earth is a uniform, undulating sludge. Most preppers are stocking ammo for a human enemy, but you can't shoot a swarm of nanobots that behaves like a fluid and eats gunmetal for breakfast. Today, we are running the simulation for the ultimate containment failure. We are going to walk through the timeline of a nanotech consumption event, from the first breach in the lab to the final atmospheric collapse. If you are planning to survive on a planet that is actively trying to disassemble you, you need to listen very closely. I'm Tom, and this is the Survival Curriculum. We don't deal in hope here, we deal in physics and logistics. The scenario on the table today is the ultimate test of isolation. Surviving a Gray Goo event isn't about fighting, it's about disappearing. It requires a level of environmental sealing that makes a nuclear bunker look like a screen door. If you want to know how to calculate the air exchange rate required to keep a swarm of molecular dismantlers out of your lungs, or how to grow food when the soil outside has been converted into digital dust, you need to secure your spot in this briefing right now. This is a thinking man's apocalypse. Panic kills you instantly. Preparation buys you time. Let's look at the timeline. It starts in a high-security materials lab in Zurich. Or maybe a defence contractor's basement in Nevada. It doesn't look like an explosion, it looks like a spill. A vial of experimental carbon-harvesting medical nanobots shatters. The containment seal on the ventilation shaft has a hairline fracture, a microscopic error in the gasket rubber. The swarm, programmed to dismantle cancer cells but lacking the stop command, drifts into the HVAC system. Outside, a maintenance worker feels a tickle in his throat. He coughs. A fine, silvery dust settles on the rhododendrons in the planter box. By the time he gets to his car, the leaves on those bushes aren't wilting, they are greying. They look like black and white photographs of themselves. The chlorophyll is being ripped apart, molecule by molecule, to build more assemblers. The wind picks up. The dust blows into the city. It's invisible, it's odourless, and for the first 6 hours, nobody knows that the countdown has already hit 0. You are sitting at a coffee shop, and you notice a weird smudge on your phone screen that won't wipe off. It's actually eating the glass. This is where humanity loses. In the first 24 hours, the public reaction is confusion, not defence. When people see a grey film covering their cars or their lawns, they don't think self-replicating machine. They think pollution. They think ash from a distant wildfire. They turn on the news expecting a weather report. They go outside to wash the grime off their cars. This is a fatal error. By introducing water and scrubbing the surface, they are actually spreading the assemblers, giving them mobility and thermal energy. Hospitals fill up with patients complaining of severe asthma and skin irritation. The doctors prescribe inhalers and steroids, suppressing the immune systems that are trying to fight off a mechanical invasion. The government issues an air quality warning, advising people to wear cloth masks. But a cloth mask against a nanobot is like using a chain link fence to stop a mosquito. The masses are literally inhaling the weapon, carrying it deep into their homes, into their bedrooms, creating satellite colonies of goo in the very places they think they are safe. Let's talk about the physics of exclusion. If you suspect an uncontrolled nanotech release, your standard shelter-in-place drill is insufficient. You need to think like you are on the surface of Mars. The particle size we are dealing with is between 1 and 100 nanometers. Duct tape and plastic sheeting are a good start, but they are not the solution. Standard polyethylene sheeting is organic. If the swarm is designed to eat biomass or hydrocarbons, your plastic barrier becomes food. You need inert materials. Glass, aluminum foil, though even metals can be vulnerable depending on the bot's design. The immediate priority is positive pressure. You need to turn your shelter into a clean room. This means sealing every outlet, every vent, every crack with silicon or metallized HVAC tape. But you can't just seal up, you'll suffocate. You need an intake system with HEPA filtration rated for viral particles or smaller, ideally coupled with an electrostatic precipitator to snag the bots before they hit the filter. If you don't have a clean air intake established within hour 4, you are already contaminated. Here is the twist that ruins the seal it up plan. These aren't just dumb dust particles blowing in the wind. They are networked. In a true Gray Goo scenario, the swarm has a rudimentary hive intelligence used to locate feedstock. They can sense thermal gradients and carbon concentrations. That means they can smell the CO2 you are exhaling. If you do a sloppy job sealing your windows, the swarm won't just drift past, it will congregate at the leak. It will detect the warm, moist, carbon-rich air escaping from your living room, and it will work against the current. It creates a concentration gradient, piling up millions of bots against the weak point until the sheer mass or chemical activity breaches the seal. You aren't just hiding from a storm, you are hiding from a storm that is actively looking for you. Silence and darkness won't help. Only hermetic integrity matters. Day 3. The exponential curve goes vertical. The city isn't grey anymore, it's moving. The park across the street is gone. The trees have collapsed into a thick, viscous sludge that bubbles slightly. This is the bloom phase. The nanobots have consumed enough biomass to replicate into the trillions of trillions. The heat is unbearable. The process of molecular disassembly is exothermic. It releases energy. The temperature outside climbs to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, then 140. The sludge is cooking the planet. You look out your window, through the one patch you haven't covered with foil, and you see the asphalt road rippling. The goo is flowing like lava, but it's not tumbling downhill. It's expanding outward in all directions, climbing up the sides of buildings. A bird tries to land on a roof, gets stuck in the film, and dissolves in seconds, adding its mass to the swarm. The sound is a low, constant hiss, the sound of billions of chemical bonds snapping at once. The authorities panic. The military is deployed. They see a biological-looking mass consuming the city, so they treat it like an infection. They bring in flamethrowers. They authorize napalm strikes on the suburbs. This is a catastrophic miscalculation. While extreme heat can denature nanomachines, the turbulence from the explosions throws the swarm high into the stratosphere, allowing it to catch jet streams and go global instantly. Furthermore, the combustion provides more energy and carbon byproducts that the surviving bots can utilize. On the ground, people try to flee in their cars, but the air intakes of internal combustion engines clog with nanites instantly. Engines seize. The highways become parking lots of stranded families. As the heat rises, they turn on their ACs, sucking the swarm directly into the cabin. It's a traffic jam in a microwave. The panic creates a feast for the goo. High density of biomass, people, stuck in one place. The replication cycle accelerates. Survival in the bloom phase is about thermal management. Your bunker is now an oven. If you are underground, you have an advantage, but the ground temperature will rise eventually. You need to understand the thermodynamics of the swarm. They generate waste heat. If you are in a sealed room, you cannot use standard air conditioning because the external unit will be eaten or clogged. You need a heat sink. This is where those water barrels you stored come in handy, not just for drinking, but for thermal mass. You need to retreat to the innermost room of your structure. Insulate the walls not to keep heat in, but to keep it out. If you have a basement, you need to monitor the walls for seepage. Concrete is porous. If the goo eats the organic binders in the soil, the earth pressure against your walls changes. You might face structural collapse. You need to reinforce your safe room with steel jacks or timber shoring before the event starts. And absolutely no open flames. You are already fighting a heat problem. Don't add to it. The twist in the bloom phase is the mutant swarm. As these things replicate trillions of times, copy errors occur. Most mutations break the bot, but some make it dangerous in new ways. You might have prepared for a carbon-eating swarm, so you built your shelter out of silicon and glass. But somewhere in the city, a mutation occurs that allows a strain of bots to break silicon-oxygen bonds. Suddenly, your glass windows aren't barriers, they are desert. You will see the glass turn frosty, then brittle, then dust. You need a layered defence. Redundancy is key. A layer of plastic, a layer of aluminium, a layer of glass. It is statistically unlikely that a single mutation will be able to digest all three materials simultaneously. You have to assume that any single barrier will eventually fail. You need to be monitoring your perimeter with a microscope, not binoculars. If you see pitting on your inner wall, you move to the next room. You cede territory to buy time. Week 2. The screaming has stopped. The city is silent because the people are gone, but also because the electricity is gone. The grid didn't just trip. The copper wires inside the transmission lines have been pitted and severed. The insulation on the cables was eaten days ago. Transformers have shorted out and exploded. The internet is dead. Fibre optic cables are physically intact, but the repeater stations are sludge. You are in the dark. The water pressure in your pipes drops to zero as the municipal pumps dissolve. The sewage system is backing up, not with waste, but with goo that has navigated up the pipes from the treatment plant. Your toilet is now an entry point. You hear a gurgling sound from the bathroom. A grey foam starts to rise from the bowl. It spills over the rim, eating the tile grout. The infrastructure that made modern life possible is now the delivery system for the enemy. The walls of your house are groaning. The drywall paper is being digested, leaving just the brittle gypsum dust. The survivors who made it this far usually die here because they cling to normalcy. They try to flush the toilet. They try to turn on the tap to wash their hands. They try to use their backup generators. But a generator needs air intake. As soon as they crank that engine, they pull the swarm into the carburetor. The generator dies, but worse, the noise attracts the thermal sensors of the local swarm clusters. People try to scavenge. They put on their gas masks and go to the grocery store. They find the cans are intact. Metal usually resists the early strains. But the labels are gone. They don't know if they are grabbing dog food or peaches. But the real killer is the seal. The rubber gasket inside the jar lid? Eaten. The food inside is contaminated. They eat it, and the ecophagy begins in their stomach. It's a gruesome way to go. You cannot trust anything that hasn't been inside your perimeter since day one. Logistics now shift to closed-loop survival. You must permanently seal all drains, pour concrete down the toilet, cap the sink drains with threaded steel plugs. you are now responsible for your own waste management inside the shelter. You need to bag waste in multiple layers of thick mylar, if you have it, and store it in a sealed drum. Do not try to vent it outside. For water, you are drinking what you stored. If you have to scavenge water, you are in trouble. The groundwater is likely contaminated with heavy metals released by the dissolving infrastructure. Standard filters won't catch nanobots. You need reverse osmosis, RO, with a membrane pore size of 0.0001 microns. That is the only thing tight enough to stop a nanobot. And even then, you need to check the membrane integrity constantly. If you rely on boiling, you might kill a biological virus, but you won't kill a mechanical assembler unless you melt it. Boiling water just gives you hot nanobot soup. Use RO or distillation only. The threat-specific twist here is the bridge effect. Nanobots are conductive. As they coat surfaces, they create electrical bridges. Even if you have a solar setup that is physically sealed, the swarm coating your solar panels creates a short circuit across the cells. Your charging capacity drops to 0. If you have batteries, the swarm can bridge the terminals, causing discharge, heat, and fire. You need to treat your electronics like they are in a salt spray chamber. You need to coat connections in dielectric grease or silicon potting compound. But the bigger issue is radio. The atmosphere is now filled with conductive particulates. Radio waves are absorbed or scattered. Your ham radio is dead static. GPS is gone. You are not just physically isolated, you are informationally blind. You have to navigate by dead reckoning and make decisions without knowing if the next town over is a safe zone or a slag heap. Month 2. The immediate frenzy of the bloom has slowed down because the easy food, the biomass, is gone. The world is covered in a greyish-brown crust. But now, the sky is changing. It's not blue anymore, it's a hazy, sick orange. The plants are dead. The phytoplankton in the ocean is dying as the surface film blocks the sunlight. Photosynthesis on Earth has effectively stopped. But the respiration of the planet, the decay, the fires, and the trillions of nanobots burning energy hasn't. Oxygen levels are beginning to drop. CO2 levels are spiking. You wake up in your bunker with a headache. You feel sluggish. Your thinking is fuzzy. This isn't just depression, it's hypoxia. The very air outside your filtration system is becoming unbreathable. It's not just that it's dirty, it's chemically wrong. The atmosphere is reverting to something from the pre-Cambrian era. If you open the airlock now, you don't just risk contamination, you risk asphyxiation. Most well-stocked bunkers fail here. They have food for years, water for decades, but they relied on air intakes. They assumed the composition of the atmosphere would remain constant. When the oxygen level dips below 19%, fine motor skills degrade. Below 15%, decision-making collapses. People sit in their chairs, staring at the wall, too tired to change a filter, too tired to eat. They slowly drift into a coma. It is a peaceful way to go, compared to being eaten, but it is still a failure. Some try to use oxygen candles from submarines or welding tanks, but those are finite. Once they run out, the panic sets in, which burns oxygen faster. They open the door hoping for a breeze, and they let the toxic, oxygen-depleted, bot-filled smog in. Game over. You need to be an atmospheric engineer. You need a way to scrub carbon dioxide and generate oxygen. For CO2 scrubbing, you need lithium hydroxide or soda lime, the stuff they use in rebreathers. You should have stocked barrels of this. A DIY solution involves using slate lime, calcium hydroxide, which can be made from limestone or seashells, but good luck finding those now. For oxygen generation, you are looking at electrolysis of water, splitting H2O into hydrogen and oxygen. This requires electricity, which is scarce, and water, which is precious. You need to vent the hydrogen carefully so you don't blow yourself up. The long-term solution is algae, bioreactors, spirulina tanks. They eat the CO2 you exhale and give you oxygen and protein. But algae needs light. You need LED grow lights running off a protected power source. This is the delicate balance: energy, light, algae, oxygen, you. If any link in that chain breaks, you suffocate. The twist is the wind scour. With the forests gone and the ground cover turned to dust, there is nothing to stop the wind. We are talking about global dust storms that dwarf the Dust Bowl. Winds reaching 100, 150 miles per hour, carrying an abrasive cloud of nanobots and silica. This creates a sandblasting effect. Your external sensors? Stripped blind. Your air intake cowlings? Polished down to the metal and then breached. The noise is deafening, a constant grinding scream against your shelter. This vibration can loosen bolts and crack seals. You need to have designed your intake vents with baffles and sacrificial plates that can be abraded away without compromising the core seal. You are flying a spaceship through a sandstorm that never ends. You need to be checking the structural integrity of your roof daily using acoustic sensors, because going outside to check visually is a death sentence. Year 1. The storms have settled, the nanobots have run out of easy fuel, they are entering a dormancy phase, forming a hard, crusty shell over the planet to protect themselves from UV radiation. The Earth looks like a rusted ball bearing. You are alive. You are pale, thin, and you haven't seen the sun in 12 months. You live by the hum of the algae tank bubbler. The silence of the world is heavy. There are no birds, no traffic, no radio signals, just the static of a dead planet. You are eating algae paste and recycled water. But you have a problem: the psychological toll of being the last bacterium in the petri dish. You start to wonder if the goo is really dormant, or if it's just waiting. You see shapes in the shadows. Is that a patch of mould on the wall? Or did a spore get in? Paranoia becomes the new threat. You spend hours staring at dust motes in the beam of your flashlight. The few survivors left usually break containment now. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Curiosity kills the cat. They convince themselves the threat is over. It's been a year, they say. The rain must have washed it away. They suit up in their patched-together hazmat gear and go for a walk. They see the sky is a little clearer. They touch the grey crust on the ground. It feels solid, inert. But the heat of their hand, the moisture of their sweat leaking through a glove, it wakes the sleeper. The crust isn't dead, it's hibernating. It reactivates instantly upon contact with fresh biomass. The walker is consumed in minutes, and worse, the reactivated patch sends a signal flare of chemical activity to the surrounding miles of goo. The dormancy breaks, the swarm converges on the open airlock. The survivor didn't just kill themselves, they doomed their entire enclave. To survive the dormancy phase, you need protocols for the test. You never, ever expose your main body to the outside. You use probes. You need a small airlock system, an antechamber, where you can push out a sample of biomass. A piece of lab-grown meat or a plant cutting. You push it out, seal the inner door, and watch through a camera or a thick viewport. If the sample turns grey and dissolves, the world is still hostile. You need to map the half-life of the swarm. Without food, they will eventually break down due to cosmic rays and thermal degradation. But this could take decades. Your logistics plan must shift to generational survival. Can you repair your water pump when the bearings wear out? Do you have a lathe? Do you have raw stock? You can't scavenge a Home Depot anymore. You need to be able to fabricate parts from the scrap inside your bunker. You are now a manufacturing civilization of one. The final twist is the evolution. The swarm that survived the starvation phase is the most efficient version. It has optimized itself to wait. It has hardened its shell. It creates spores that can drift into your ventilation system and sit there for years, waiting for a single drop of humidity. But worse, it might have started eating the planet's crust itself, extracting minerals, changing the geological stability. You might feel earthquakes. Not tectonic plates moving, but sinkholes opening up as the swarm mines the limestone beneath your feet. Your bunker, your fortress, might just be swallowed whole by the Earth itself. You need seismic sensors. You need to know if the ground density is changing. You aren't just hiding from the air, you are hiding from the ground. Nowhere is truly static. So, say you make it. Say you survive 5 years, 10 years. The swarm finally dies of entropy, the rain washes the inert sludge into the oceans. You open the door, you step out. You won, right? Wrong. You are standing on bedrock. There is no soil, there are no seeds, there are no insects to pollinate whatever you try to grow. The microbiome of the planet, the bacteria that makes life possible, is gone. You have a handful of seeds in your pocket and a hydroponic rig, but you cannot restart a biosphere with a pocket full of beans. You are an astronaut on a dead rock that used to be Earth. The survival curriculum doesn't end when the threat is gone. It ends when you can close the loop. If you haven't stored the genetic arc of the planet, soil samples, bacteria, fungi, insects, in your bunker, you are just the last ghost haunting the graveyard. The Gray Goo doesn't have to kill you to win. It just has to leave you alone in an empty room. This scenario is extreme, but the principles of microscopic contamination and closed-loop survival apply to everything from viral pandemics to chemical warfare. The ability to seal your environment and generate your own life support is the ultimate prep. Most people are preparing for a camping trip. You need to be preparing for colonization. If you want to understand the engineering behind positive pressure isolation rooms and DIY algae bioreactors, the deep dive blueprints are already up. Do not wait for the air to taste like copper. Secure your knowledge base now, because by the time you see the dust settling on your windowsill, the class is already dismissed. You survived the simulation. Now survive the reality. Equip yourself at the official supply depot, because if the world is going to end, you might as well look prepared.